Hello friends. Today we examine an interesting situation in which an industrial country began to exploit a natural resources which it was previously imported, later popularly known as the Dutch disease. Welcome to the session. Developing a natural resource domestically can many times create some economic problem in industrial countries. Dutch disease is such a problem perceived by Netherlands when they began to exploit the oil resource, the natural gas resource which it was previously imported. The country began to lose international competitiveness as well as it created unemployment as well as deindustrialization in the country. So this is the basis behind the Dutch disease. Now let us examine this concept in a bit detail. The industrial country or industrialized country Netherlands was sitting on a huge quantity of natural and oil gas reserve. In 1959, they exploited or in fact innovated or discovered the oil and natural gas reserve in North Sea, and there was a euphoria was created among the investors that this country Netherlands is going to become a very strong economy because while in 1959 it exploited or it innovated or it discovered the natural gas reserve, the basic premise or basic feeling among the investors is that this country is going to become a very strong economy. So there was huge demand for the asset held by the Netherlands, or in fact there happened an increased demand for the Netherlands asset, the Dutch asset. Obviously people in fact have what is known as the beeline for the Netherlands asset or the Dutch asset. And as a result of increased demand for the Netherlands asset, it obviously led to an appreciation of the currency of the Netherlands. So there took place an appreciation of the currency of Netherlands, was known as guilder and during that time, and now it is obviously euro. So when there was an appreciation of the currency of Netherlands, it adversely affected the traded sector of the country. We know that when there is a currency appreciation, the currency will become costlier in the international market, and it adversely affect the firms or the firms of those countries which is in fact engaged in the export sector. So the country lose international competitiveness because the Dutch currency in fact appreciated, and this resulted in the reduction in the production of the commodities and in fact deindustrialization in Netherlands. So this is known as the Dutch disease. Since that means Dutch disease is an interesting situation in which the perceived strength of an economy turned into weakness. So what is the perceived strength? The industrial country, already developed country Netherlands, in fact discovered or innovated the oil reserves, the natural gas reserves in the country. So everybody thinks that this country is going to become a strong economy in future. So people come up with the increased demand for those assets held by this country. So there was increased international demand for the Dutch asset. As a result of this increased demand, it in fact rose the prices of the Dutch currency in the international market. So there was an appreciation of the Dutch currency, and during that time, in fact 1959 was the year where the country discovered the oil and natural gas reserve under the North Sea. While during the 1970s, we know it was a period of the oil shocks, and along with the discovery of the natural gas, in companion with or along with the prices or increased prices of oil in the world market, people began to think that this country is going to become a strong economy. Obviously, there was increased demand for the Dutch asset, which resulted in the appreciation of the Dutch currency, and as a result of this appreciation of Dutch currency, the Netherlands lose international competitiveness, and it adversely affected the traded sector of the country. Because this country is essentially having a strong industrial sector depending upon the export market. As a result of this appreciation of the Dutch currency, this sector, the export sector, faced decline in demand and in fact lead to deindustrialization and unemployment in the country. That's why we said a perceived strength of this country turned as one of its important weakness. So since this issue was first noted in Netherlands, first observed in Netherlands, we call it as Dutch disease. But similar, that means almost similar pattern was observed in the countries like Great Britain, Austria, Norway, for example, when they began to exploit the natural resource. So this is the issue. This is the issue of Dutch disease, or this is what is known as the phenomenon of Dutch disease. Now, once more, how it happened? It all started with the discovery of oil and natural gas reserves in Netherlands in the year 1959. As a result of it, there was the belief among the international investors that this country is going to become a very strong economy. So there was increased demand for Dutch assets, Dutch owned assets, increased demand for Dutch currency, which led to an appreciation in the value of their currency, Dutch guilder. And as a result of this appreciation, the country lose international competitiveness. And as a result that, since this country lose international competitiveness, it led to a reduction in the export, because export sector obviously is adversely affected. It led to deindustrialization and unemployment. And again, this is the path, this is how this so-called, what we said, a perceived strength, a believed to be an issue which going to have an advantages to the country, adversely affected. In fact, lead to some kind of a negative influence, bad influence on the economy. That's why we call it as a disease in the country of Netherlands. Now, this can have some kind of other implication as well. Now, since this country, Netherlands, a new sector in fact emerges. Once there is a new sector which was earlier it was not there, obviously it bids away resources from the other sectors, already established sectors. That means we have a new sector in the Netherlands which was natural gas industry or oil industry. When it expands, it obviously requires labor and capital, and it can acquire labor and capital by bidding resources from all other sectors. So obviously a development of a particular industry in the country which was earlier not there obviously put an upward pressure on the wage rate. It will put an upward pressure on the rate of interest. Obviously makes all other sectors more expensive. That means the cost of production in entire economy, in fact all other sectors, export sector, will have an upward trend, and it will adversely affect the production and in fact the cost of production of other sectors as well. Again, that's the second method through which in fact Dutch experienced so-called Dutch disease. Yet another issue was that this sector, the newly emerged sector, which was the natural gas sector or the oil sector, in fact is less labor intensive. We know that it's a less labor intensive, and obviously it cannot absorb all those laborers which was in fact released by other sectors which were experiencing deindustrialization as well as unemployment. So in fact unemployment began to rise, and this country even faced an impending danger of deindustrialization. So this is the Dutch disease. So once more, Dutch disease is a situation in which a country, essentially an industrialized country, began to exploit a particular natural resource which it was previously imported. Then there will be an increased demand for the asset of those countries, which will lead to an appreciation of its currency, and when there is an appreciation, the country will have a danger of losing international competitiveness. In fact, this has happened in the case of Netherlands in the year 1959, when they innovated the oil and natural gas reserve under the North Sea, and ultimately leading to a situation where this country faced unemployment as well as deindustrialization. And similar things happened in the case of, as we said, in the case of Great Britain, Norway, Austria, for example. A similar pattern, in fact, happened. So this is the situation of dust disease. Hope that this session is useful to you. So until we meet this time, stay safe, happy learning. Thank you.